In May 1996, what should have been a peaceful hiking trip through Virginia's Shenandoah National Park turned into a nightmare, one so chilling that it would haunt the region for decades. Julianne "Julie" Williams, 24, and her partner Laura "Loie" Winans, 26, set out on an adventure, unaware that something, or someone, was lurking in the wilderness, waiting to turn their dream getaway into a scene of unimaginable horror. The couple, both passionate nature lovers, had come to Shenandoah for a much-needed retreat. Julie was preparing to start a new job in Vermont on June 1st, a fresh chapter in her life. Instead, that date would mark the horrifying end of a frantic search, one that uncovered a crime so brutal it left even seasoned investigators shaken. Julie and Loie entered the park on May 19th, accompanied by their golden retriever, Taj. They followed the White Canyon Trail, but heavy rain forced them to change their route. They registered for additional permits and were last seen on May 24th, when a park ranger gave them a ride. Their final campsite lay near a secluded stream off the Appalachian Trail, just a short distance from the popular Skyland Lodge. It seemed safe, but safety, they would soon learn, was an illusion. For days, no one realized anything was wrong. Then, on May 31st, Julie's father, Thomas Williams, grew uneasy. His daughter should have called about her new job. When she didn't, he reported her missing. Park rangers quickly located Julie and Loie's car near Skyland Lodge, but something was off. The couple was nowhere in sight. Then, a chilling clue, Taj, their dog, was found wandering alone, confused and distressed. Something had happened. Something terrible. The next day, searchers pushed deeper into the wilderness, and that's when they found it. The campsite was eerily silent, but as they moved closer, the truth revealed itself. A scene so gruesome it would stay with them forever. Julie and Loie's bodies lay close together, bound and gagged, their final moments marked by sheer terror. They had suffered. The brutality of the attack spoke of calculated evil, of a predator who had stalked them in the night. Investigators descended on the scene, but the remote location and lack of evidence made the case daunting. They searched for answers, piecing together the couple's last days. A recovered camera showed their joy-filled adventure up until May 24th, the last day they were seen alive. Then, darkness swallowed their story. The investigation led authorities to a man named Daryl David Rice. He had a disturbing history, a documented hatred for women, and had been spotted in Shenandoah around the time of the murders. Restraints were found in his vehicle. He had even made chilling remarks about Julie and Loie's relationship. Prosecutors believed they had their man, but then, in 2003, everything collapsed. DNA from the crime scene didn't match Rice. It didn't match the victims either. The case, once seemingly airtight, fell apart in an instant. The real killer was still out there. For nearly 3 decades, Julie and Loie's families lived in torment, haunted by the unanswered questions. Who had been watching them? Who had crept into their campsite that night, tying them up, silencing their screams and snuffing out their young lives? Then, in 2024, science finally caught up to the truth. A breakthrough in DNA technology led investigators to a new name, Walter Leo Jackson. A convicted serial molester, Jackson had a history of brutal attacks, but he would never face justice for what he did to Julie and Loie. He had died in prison in 2018. The discovery was bittersweet. The families had answers but no justice. The true monster had been hiding in plain sight all along, and the chilling question remains: how many others did he leave behind in the darkness? June 14, 2016, was supposed to be a magical evening at Disney World's Grand Floridian Resort and Spa in Orlando, Florida. The Graves family, visiting from Elkhorn, Nebraska, was soaking up the Disney magic. Among them was their adventurous 2-year-old son, Lane Thomas Graves, who was enjoying the warm night by the Seven Seas Lagoon with his parents, Matt and Melissa, and his big sister Ella. That night, Disney was screening Zootopia under the stars, and little Lane was having the time of his life, splashing in the shallow water near the shore. It was around 8:30 p.m., a time when the Florida alligators are most active. As Lane bent down near the water's edge, an alligator, estimated to be around 7 to 8 feet long, emerged from the lagoon. In a flash, the reptile lunged and grabbed Lane, mistaking him for an easy meal. Matt, standing just a few feet away, heard the splash and immediately sprang into action. Without hesitation, he rushed into the water, trying to pry his son from the gator's powerful jaws. He fought desperately, but the alligator was too strong, dragging Lane into deeper water and out of reach. It was every parent's worst nightmare unfolding in an instant. A massive search operation kicked off immediately. Disney staff, law enforcement, and dive teams worked through the night. After 17 grueling hours, Lane's body was found 6 feet underwater, about 15 yards from where he was taken. The medical examiner later confirmed his cause of death as drowning and traumatic injuries caused by the alligator. In the wake of the tragedy, Disney wasted no time making changes. They removed nearly 100 alligators from their properties, installed barriers around the lagoon, and put up new warning signs explicitly mentioning alligators. They also built a lighthouse memorial near the lagoon in honor of Lane. Meanwhile, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission investigated the incident and deemed it a predatory attack, noting that it occurred at dusk, prime hunting time for alligators. Although no swimming signs had been posted, they didn't warn guests about alligators. Shockingly, reports later revealed that some guests had even alerted Disney staff about a gator in the area before the attack, but no action was taken. Despite their unimaginable grief, Matt and Melissa Graves chose not to take legal action against Disney. Instead, they channeled their loss into something meaningful, establishing the Lane Thomas Foundation. The foundation helps families navigating pediatric organ transplants, a cause close to their hearts. It was October 8, 2024, in the breathtaking wilderness of Yosemite National Park, California, where Harry Partington, a 22-year-old adventurer from Perth, Australia, set out for another exciting journey. A seasoned explorer with a passion for nature, Harry was the kind of guy who filled his social media with stunning landscapes and thrilling hiking tales. This trip to Yosemite was supposed to be just another notch in his adventure belt, a memory to cherish. Instead, it turned into an unspeakable tragedy. Harry was tackling the 4-mile trail, a 4.8-mile trek that climbs over 3,000 feet, boasting jaw-dropping views of El Capitan, Yosemite Falls, and Half Dome. While it's a bucket list-worthy hike, it's also no joke. Steep, rugged, and demanding every ounce of focus and stamina. That day, around 2:30 p.m., as Harry neared Union Point at about 6,300 feet above sea level, the weather took a nasty turn. Strong winds and light rain swept through the area, turning the trail into a hazard zone. Then, in a split second, the unimaginable happened. A massive tree, uprooted by the powerful gusts, came crashing down onto the trail. Harry, caught in its path, was tragically struck and fatally injured. Nearby, a German hiker was also hit. She survived, but her injuries were severe enough to require an emergency airlift to the hospital. Park rangers, paramedics, firefighters, and search and rescue teams sprang into action, helicopters slicing through the sky to manage the crisis. For visitors, the sight of whirring choppers and a swarm of emergency personnel was both shocking and heartbreaking. Kelly Kennedy Bentley, a tourist waiting for her family at the trailhead, described the tension in the air, feeling relieved that her loved ones were safe but deeply shaken by the nearby tragedy. The 4-mile trail was temporarily closed, and hikers were kept at a distance as responders worked. Witnesses recalled the chaos of the rescue effort, with at least 30 emergency personnel rushing to the scene. Sadly, Harry's tragic accident wasn't the only recent loss in Yosemite. Just weeks earlier, the body of Kirk Thomas Olson, a former park ranger, had been found near the Ostrander Lake Trail after being missing for 3 weeks. Incidents like these serve as stark reminders of how unpredictable the wilderness can be. Yosemite, despite its majestic beauty, has claimed over 1,300 lives since its establishment in 1890, with many hikers falling victim to unforeseen dangers. The Mariposa County Sheriff's Office announced plans for an autopsy to confirm Harry's exact cause of death. though the falling tree was the undisputed culprit. While falling trees, dubbed hazard trees by experts, are rare causes of fatalities, they remain an ever-present risk in forested areas, especially during storms. For Harry's family and friends, his sudden passing was devastating. Tributes poured in across social media, with loved ones remembering his adventurous spirit and boundless love for travel. Victor Mary, a close friend, reflected that Harry had traveled further than most people ever dream, and though his journey had come to an abrupt end, his legacy would live on in the hearts of everyone he touched. Harry's story is a sobering reminder that no matter how experienced or prepared we are, nature has its own unpredictable ways. His passing is a heartbreaking loss, but his passion for adventure will forever inspire those who dare to explore the world's most beautiful, yet unforgiving, landscapes. The Carpathian Mountains, rugged, breathtaking, and untamed. For 19-year-old Maria Diana, this remote wilderness was meant to be an escape, a well-earned reward after the grueling months of high school exams. But as she set off on that July day in 2024, she had no idea she was walking straight into a nightmare. Maria had always loved the mountains. The crisp air, the endless greenery, the thrill of adventure, it called to her. That summer, she decided to explore the Yepi May Trail near Brasov with her boyfriend, eager to see the famed Spumwasa waterfall. But not everyone shared her enthusiasm. Her pregnant mother begged her not to go, her warnings heavy with unease. "Be careful," her mother had urged. "These mountains are dangerous." Maria had just smiled. "Nothing bad will happen." She was wrong. At first, the hike was peaceful. The two moved along the winding trail, surrounded by towering trees and the distant murmur of the waterfall. But deep in the wilderness, they were not alone. A shadow moved in the undergrowth. Something was watching them. Then, a snapping branch. A low, guttural growl. The brown bear emerged, massive and relentless. It locked eyes on Maria and her boyfriend, its powerful body tense, its breath heavy. And then, it charged. Panic took over. Maria and her boyfriend scrambled, trying to call for help as the beast closed in. Maria managed to dial emergency services, her voice trembling as she described the horror unfolding before her. "It's coming. Please, please hurry." Her boyfriend called too, but no one could reach them in time. Then, a scream. The bear struck with brutal force, its claws tearing into Maria's leg. She fought, but the beast was too strong, too fast. It dragged her from the path, pulling her toward the trees. Her boyfriend, helpless, could only watch in horror. Maria's screams filled the forest as the bear's powerful jaws clamped down. Then, with a final, violent shake, it threw her over the edge. She plummeted 400 feet down a steep cliff. The silence that followed was deafening. When the Salvamont Prahova rescue team arrived, they found the bear still there, prowling around Maria's lifeless body. It had tasted blood, and it wasn't finished. Rescuers had no choice. A gunshot rang out. The bear collapsed, but the damage was done. Maria lay broken at the base of the cliff, her body covered in claw marks, deep bites, evidence of the brutal attack. There had been no chance of survival. Maria's death sent shockwaves through Romania. Her boyfriend, shaken beyond words, struggled with unbearable guilt. "I should have done more," he told reporters. "It should have been me." Even experienced rescuers were shaken. Dan Banu, the head of the response team, described it as one of the most horrifying attacks he had seen in over a decade. The tragedy sparked a national debate. Romania, home to Europe's largest brown bear population outside Russia, had seen a rise in bear encounters. The government reacted swiftly, approving a controversial measure to cull nearly 500 bears. But was it the right answer? Environmentalists argued that human expansion and irresponsible tourism were pushing bears closer to people. Killing them, they warned, wouldn't solve the deeper problem. Maria Diana's story is more than just a tragedy. It's a warning. The wilderness is beautiful. It is breathtaking. But above all, it is wild. And in the wild, we are never truly in control. It was November 16, 2018, when 26-year-old John Allen Chow embarked on a mission that would change his life forever. A devoted American missionary, Chow had trained with All Nations International, a Christian organization, and was deeply passionate about sharing his faith. His dream? To reach the Sentinelese, a fiercely independent tribe living on North Sentinel Island in India's Andaman Islands. They had lived in isolation for thousands of years and were notorious for rejecting any outside contact. But despite the risks, Chow felt it was his calling to introduce them to Christianity. Chow wasn't new to the Andaman Islands. He had visited in 2015 and 2016, learning about the Sentinelese along the way. But this trip was different. This time, he wanted to meet them face to face. The Sentinelese, believed to number around 150, had a well-earned reputation for protecting their isolation, often greeting intruders with a barrage of arrows. Chow, however, was determined. He spent months preparing and hired local fishermen for $325 to take him close to the island, even though they knew it was illegal and extremely dangerous. On November 15th, Chow made his first attempt. Paddling in a kayak while the fishermen stayed behind, he approached the shore and introduced himself, saying that his name was John and that both he and Jesus loved them. The Sentinelese responded by readying their arrows. Hoping to win them over, he offered a fish. It didn't work. The tribe's hostility forced him to retreat. Not one to give up easily, Chow tried again later that day, bringing gifts like a football and more fish. The result? Another angry reaction and a hasty retreat. Frustrated but undeterred, he wrote in his journal that he was scared, but still felt called to his mission. He debated leaving, but ultimately decided he couldn't turn back. On November 16th, before making his final attempt, Chow penned a letter to his family, acknowledging the risks and asking for their forgiveness if things went wrong. He made it clear that he didn't blame the tribe or God for whatever might happen. The fishermen, waiting offshore, later reported that as Chow neared the beach, the Sentinelese attacked, shooting him with arrows before dragging his body away. They watched in horror, later recalling that the tribe appeared to bury him on the beach. Authorities confirmed Chow's death, but opted not to retrieve his remains to avoid further conflict. His mission sparked fierce debate. Some saw it as reckless, violating laws designed to protect the Sentinelese from outsiders and potential diseases. Others viewed it as a testament to his unwavering faith. His family forgave the tribe, seeing his mission as an act of sincere devotion. In the end, Chow's story serves as a powerful reminder of the tension between faith and respecting cultural boundaries, a topic that remains deeply polarizing. It was a Saturday afternoon in late March 2024, and Talon and Wyatt Brooks, two adventurous brothers from El Dorado, Northern California, were gearing up for one of their favorite outdoor traditions. At 21 and 18, they were passionate about nature and loved hiking the hills near Georgetown, searching for deer antler sheds, a hobby they enjoyed every spring. Talon, the older brother, worked with his dad painting houses and chopping firewood. He had a love for fishing and playing guitar, while Wyatt, training to be a firefighter, was a baseball enthusiast and a skilled bow hunter. Exploring the wilderness together had strengthened their bond over the years, making them a true brotherly duo of the great outdoors. But what started as a normal, peaceful day in the woods soon took a horrific turn, one they never could have prepared for. As the brothers walked along a remote dirt road, their quiet afternoon was shattered when they spotted a mountain lion creeping toward them. Knowing the risks, they followed all the safety protocols, making themselves look larger, shouting, even throwing a backpack to scare it off. But this lion was unusually aggressive. Instead of retreating, it charged straight at them, setting off a terrifying battle for survival. The lion pounced on Wyatt first, pinning him down and biting his face. He fought back with everything he had, and Talon, without hesitation, jumped in to rescue his brother, hitting the lion to get it off. Wyatt managed to break free and briefly gained the upper hand, but the lion was relentless. It shifted its focus to Talon, locking onto him and gripping his throat. Wyatt, despite his severe injuries, fought desperately to save his brother, but the mountain lion wouldn't let go. Realizing he couldn't overpower the beast alone, Wyatt, covered in blood and barely holding on, made the painful decision to run for help. Wyatt stumbled to their car, his face and neck torn apart, and called 911, his voice trembling with urgency. After making the call, he rushed back to the scene, but Talon and the lion were gone. When authorities arrived, they found Talon's lifeless body nearby. The mountain lion was still there but fled when deputies fired warning shots. Tragically, Talon did not survive. Wildlife officials later tracked down and euthanized the lion, confirming through DNA analysis that it was the same animal responsible for the attack. The Brooks family was left devastated. They had lost Talon, a kind-hearted, nature-loving soul, but they were grateful that Wyatt had survived. He was rushed to the hospital with severe facial and neck injuries, requiring reconstructive surgery. Despite the trauma, Wyatt's resilience never wavered, and he is now focused on healing and continuing his firefighter training. This tragic event has ignited debates about California's wildlife management policies, particularly Proposition 117, a 1990 law that classifies mountain lions as a specially protected species. The brothers' uncle, Malcolm Brooks, has spoken out, arguing that while protecting wildlife is important, human safety must also be considered, especially as urban expansion pushes people and predators into closer contact. Experts emphasize that fatal mountain lion attacks are extremely rare, with this being the first in California since 2004 and the first in El Dorado County since 1994. Typically, mountain lions avoid humans, but this particular 90-pound male acted unpredictably. While researchers continue to study mountain lion behavior, the Brooks family is left mourning the loss of Talon, determined to raise awareness and advocate for better safety measures. Meanwhile, Wyatt, still healing physically and emotionally, is determined to honor his brother's memory. The Brooks family, though deeply grieving, stands proud of Talon and Wyatt's bravery, cherishing the memories of their inseparable bond and love for the great outdoors. In April 2002, Carolyn Stuttle, a kind-hearted and ambitious 19-year-old from York, England, was nearing the end of her gap-year adventure in Australia. Traveling with her close friend, Sarah Holliday, Caroline had spent months exploring the country's iconic landmarks. Their journey was almost complete, with Bundaberg, a quiet town in Queensland, being one of their final stops before heading home. But Caroline would never return to her family. Like countless young travelers, she had worked hard to save for her trip, taking shifts at Pizza Hut and making detailed plans for the adventure of a lifetime before starting her studies in criminal psychology. She dreamed of helping others, eager to begin the next chapter of her life. On April 10, 2002, Caroline stepped out alone to make a phone call to her boyfriend in England. As she walked back to her caravan park, her path crossed with Ian Privet, a 32-year-old drifter and drug addict. Desperate for money to fuel his addiction, Privet's desperation turned violent. He spotted Caroline and attempted to snatch her handbag. She fought back, refusing to let go. Determined to get what he wanted, Privet's aggression escalated. He forced Caroline over the railing of the bridge they were standing on, sending her plummeting 32 feet to the ground below. The fall left her fatally injured, her life stolen for the trivial sum of 180 pounds, a meaningless amount in exchange for a bright future extinguished too soon. When police arrived, Caroline's body lay beneath the bridge, her belongings gone. News of her murder quickly spread, shattering her family's world and stunning the community back in York. Investigators pursued leads, but Privet remained unidentified and the case grew cold. Months later, an unexpected breakthrough emerged. While serving time for an unrelated crime, Privet reportedly confessed to Caroline's murder. His chilling admission gained credibility when authorities discovered a handwritten message scrawled on a bench near his hostel. "I threw the girl off the bridge. I am sorry." The confession gave police the break they needed, leading to Privet's arrest and trial in 2004. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and the jury found him guilty. Judge Peter Doney sentenced him to life in prison. condemning his actions and the tragic loss of an innocent young woman. For Caroline's grieving family, the verdict provided some relief, but no true closure. Knowing Privet was behind bars could not erase the pain of her absence. Determined to honor her memory, Caroline's family founded Caroline's Rainbow Foundation, a charity dedicated to educating young travelers about safety and awareness while abroad. Her brother, Richard Stuttle, has continued the foundation's mission, ensuring Caroline's adventurous spirit and kindness live on through their work. However, in 2020, Privet was released from prison, reopening the wounds her loss had inflicted. Richard spoke out about the lifelong impact of Caroline's murder, stating that while Privet's life sentence ended, theirs would last forever. On September 19, 2019, Stephen Weber Jr., a 40-year-old from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, was living his best life on a dreamy vacation with his girlfriend, Kenesha Antoine. The couple had splurged on a once-in-a-lifetime experience at the ultra-luxurious Manta Resort off the coast of Pemba Island, Tanzania. Their underwater cabin, a jaw-dropping $1,700 a night stay, offered front-row seats to the wonders of marine life, like living inside a giant, fancy fish tank. But this wasn't just any getaway. It was meant to be a milestone in their love story. Stephen, a guy known for his adventurous and romantic streak, had a grand plan up his sleeve. He was about to pop the big question in the most unforgettable way possible, an underwater proposal. With a handwritten note tucked safely in a Ziploc bag and an engagement ring in hand, he set the stage for a moment straight out of a movie. The note? Pure romance. He joked that he couldn't hold his breath long enough to list all the reasons he loved Kenesha, but assured her that his love for her grew stronger every day. Then, with a flip of the note, he dropped the bombshell. "Will you marry me?" Inside the cozy cabin, Kenesha eagerly waited, capturing the whole thing on video. As Stephen swam up to the glass, grinning like a kid with a secret, he held up the note and then the ring. She laughed, thrilled by the surprise, but just moments after, Stephen swam out of view, never to return. Minutes passed, then more. The excitement turned into worry. He should have been back by now. Kenesha, now panicking, tried to contact the resort staff. No luck. Desperate, she flagged down passing boaters for help. When Stephen was finally brought to the surface, he had a faint pulse, but despite CPR efforts, he didn't make it. Kenesha's heartbreak spilled onto Facebook, where she shared the gut-wrenching reality. Stephen never got to hear her say yes. She reminisced about their magical trip, how he had gushed over their once-in-a-lifetime experience. His sudden passing left everyone in shock. Stephen was an experienced swimmer, familiar with snorkeling, making the tragedy even harder to comprehend. His family, especially his sister Mandy, questioned if there was more to the story. How could such a confident swimmer not make it back? The Manta Resort released a statement confirming that Stephen drowned while freediving outside the cabin. The water was calm, the depth around 32 feet, and yet something went terribly wrong. Despite lingering questions, one truth remains. Stephen spent his final moments doing something he loved for someone he deeply cherished. His family and friends, though devastated, take solace in the joy he brought to so many lives. Kenesha, heartbroken but grateful for their time together, holds on to the memories of the man she was ready to call her husband. His tragic yet touching story continues to remind people of the fragility of life and the power of love. On July 18, 2023, Steve Curry, a 71-year-old retired electrician from Sunland, California, set out on what would be his final adventure in the unforgiving terrain of Death Valley National Park. Known for its scorching heat and extreme conditions, Death Valley is one of the hottest places on Earth, with temperatures frequently soaring above 100 Fahrenheit, 38 Celsius. On this particular day, the thermometer hit a brutal 121 Fahrenheit, 49 Celsius. But for Steve, the desert wasn't something to fear. It was another opportunity for adventure. An avid outdoorsman, Steve had spent years hiking, rock climbing, and mountain biking, and was no stranger to challenging terrains. He approached the desert's dangers with determination, believing that the beauty of nature was worth the effort. That morning, Steve had a conversation with a reporter from the Los Angeles Times at Zabriskie Point. He stood in the shade, casually acknowledging the intense heat but showing no signs of backing down. With sunscreen on, a sun hat shielding his face, and an unwavering resolve, Steve began his hike from Golden Canyon to Zabriskie Point, a popular trail known for its breathtaking views but also its demanding climbs. Despite the brutal heat, Steve didn't hesitate. To him, the challenge was part of the thrill. But by 3:40 p.m., tragedy struck. After completing his hike, Steve was found unresponsive near a restroom at the Golden Canyon trailhead. A fellow hiker saw him and immediately called for help. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, performing CPR and using a defibrillator in an attempt to revive him. Sadly, despite their best efforts, Steve could not be revived and was declared dead at the scene. The cause of Steve's death was linked to the extreme heat of the area, with temperatures at Furnace Creek reaching 121 degrees Fahrenheit. Experts believed the heat within the canyon itself was even more intense due to the canyon walls trapping and radiating the sun's energy. This made the already dangerous conditions even more hazardous. Steve's death was part of a larger pattern of tragic incidents that plagued national parks during the summer of 2023. Just days before, another person was found lifeless in their car in Death Valley when the air conditioning failed. A teenager in Alaska's Kenai Fjords National Park and a man in Colorado's Rocky Mountain National Park also lost their lives under similar distressing conditions. Despite his experience, Steve's determination to finish the hike without accepting offers of assistance from other hikers earlier that day ultimately led to his untimely demise. His adventurous spirit, always pushing himself to keep up with younger hikers, was part of what made him who he was. But on this day, it wasn't enough to overcome the extreme heat. At home, his wife Rayma had no idea Steve was venturing out to Death Valley that day. While she didn't share his love for hiking, she always supported his outdoor pursuits. After Steve didn't return that evening, Rayma grew worried. It wasn't until 2 days later that she received the heartbreaking news from the coroner's office. Reflecting on their nearly 30 years of marriage, Rayma described Steve as a warm, adventurous person with a deep connection to nature. She could never have imagined that his passion for the outdoors would lead to such a tragic end. Steve's passing occurred during a severe heat wave that had been gripping the southwestern United States for weeks. Death Valley's temperatures had been regularly surpassing 110 Fahrenheit, creating perilous conditions even for experienced hikers. Despite warnings from the National Park Service advising against strenuous activities during peak heat, many visitors still underestimated the dangers. Though Steve had taken some precautions, wearing sunscreen, carrying water, and dressing appropriately, the intensity of the heat proved overwhelming. When the body's core temperature exceeds 104 Fahrenheit, 40 Celsius, heat-related illness can set in rapidly, particularly in a place like Death Valley, where the environment is as hostile as it is beautiful. Steve's story is a somber reminder of nature's unpredictable power, no matter how prepared you think you are. Even a seasoned adventurer like Steve couldn't escape the desert's brutal grasp. In March 1981, Carl McCann, a 35-year-old wildlife photographer, set out on what he believed would be a solitary yet fulfilling expedition into the heart of Alaska's Brooks Range. With a passion for capturing the raw beauty of the wilderness, he arrived fully equipped, carrying 500 rolls of film, 1,400 pounds of provisions, and multiple firearms, prepared for what he thought would be an unforgettable summer. But a critical oversight would seal his fate, leaving him trapped, alone, and helpless in the unforgiving Alaskan wild. McCann, originally from Texas, was no stranger to adventure. In 1976, he'd already spent 5 months alone in the Brooks Range, an experience that likely instilled in him a sense of confidence, perhaps too much confidence. This time, however, he made one fatal miscalculation. He believed he had arranged for a friend to pick him up at summer's end, but he never confirmed his return flight. Unbeknownst to him, the pilot he had paid for plane repairs had never actually been scheduled to bring him home. As spring gave way to summer, McCann documented his journey in meticulous detail. His diary began as an awe-filled account of the thriving wildlife around him. But by August, his entries started to reveal a slow, creeping dread. "I think I should have used more foresight about arranging my departure," he wrote, an early sign that he was beginning to realize the gravity of his mistake. As the days passed and the plane never arrived, McCann's situation became increasingly dire. His supplies dwindled, and with autumn approaching, nights grew colder. He tried to stretch his rations by hunting ducks and muskrats, and even drying caribou meat from a carcass he found. Yet, despite his resourcefulness, his isolation became his greatest enemy. In late August, a glimmer of hope appeared in the sky. A small plane circled above his camp. It was an Alaska State Trooper, spotting his remote campsite. But McCann, unaware of the life or death weight of his actions, waved his orange sleeping bag casually, unknowingly signaling, "All okay, do not wait." His only chance at rescue vanished into the sky. As fall tightened its grip, McCann's journal reflected his descent from determination to desperation. Hunting became nearly impossible, as wolves and foxes competed for the little game that remained. His frostbitten hands struggled with even the most basic tasks. The cold gnawed at him relentlessly, and hunger sapped his strength. His once detailed diary entries became short, frantic scribbles, his handwriting growing shaky and uneven. By November, with no food left and his body wasting away, the thought of trekking 75 miles to Fort Yukon became a fantasy rather than a plan. His writing turned to hopelessness, his words filled with the fear of being forgotten, lost forever in the vast, empty wilderness. Near Thanksgiving, McCann described crushing weakness, dizzy spells, and relentless chills. With the last of his fuel, he lit a final fire, scrawling a farewell message in his diary. He pinned his Alaska driver's license to his last note, leaving behind instructions for his undeveloped film and a humble prayer for forgiveness. Then, in the silence of the frozen wild, he ended his own life. On February 2, 1982, a month-long search, initiated by concerned friends, led Alaska State Troopers to his camp. His tent was buried under snow, its entrance sealed by the harsh winter. Inside, they found his lifeless, emaciated body, preserved by the cold. His diary, over 100 pages long, chronicled the slow, harrowing decline of a man once filled with wonder and determination, reduced to a soul consumed by solitude and despair. The coroner's inquest would later confirm what his last pages had already revealed. Carl McCann had perished, not from the cruelty of nature, but from the crushing weight of isolation, hunger, and the realization that rescue would never come. On July 25, 2019, the world lost a bright young soul in a heartbreaking and deeply unsettling way. Alana Cutland, a 19-year-old Cambridge University student, met a tragic fate when she fell from a small plane into the dense, untamed jungles of Madagascar. What was supposed to be an incredible research adventure turned into an unimaginable nightmare. Alana was not your average college student. This second-year natural sciences whiz from Milton Keynes, England, was a lover of nature, a fearless explorer, and an independent spirit with a deep passion for discovering the unknown. She had set off on a solo research expedition to Madagascar with an ambitious goal: to study a rare species of crustaceans. Self-funded and determined, she embraced every challenge that came her way with an infectious enthusiasm that inspired those around her. Her family and friends described her as intelligent, adventurous, and always eager to learn more about the world. Her trip to Madagascar was a testament to her dedication and curiosity. She had carefully planned a 6-week study in Anjajavi, a remote and biodiverse region perfect for her research. However, her journey took an alarming turn after only 8 days. Something was wrong. Reports suggest that Alana started experiencing severe mental and physical distress, paranoia, confusion, and disorientation. The likely culprit? A reaction to doxycycline, an anti-malarial medication known to cause psychological side effects in rare cases. Her once sharp and inquisitive mind seemed to be battling something far beyond her control. As her condition worsened, her deeply concerned parents, back home in England, began receiving bizarre and unsettling phone calls from their daughter. Worried out of their minds and unable to help from thousands of miles away, they made the difficult decision to bring her home early. A private plane was arranged to take her from Anjajavi to the capital, Antananarivo, where she would catch a flight back to England. Accompanying her on this crucial flight were Ruth Johnson, a trusted family friend, and the pilot, Mahefa Tahina Rantoanina. On the morning of July 25th, the small Cessna aircraft took off, carrying 3 passengers. But what should have been a simple flight to safety quickly spiraled into chaos. Alana, visibly unwell and restless, unbuckled her seatbelt mid-flight and reached for the door. Panic erupted. Both Ruth and the pilot desperately tried to stop her, struggling against her distress and confusion. Despite their frantic efforts, Alana managed to break free, and in a moment that defied belief, she fell from the plane at an altitude of 3,700 feet, disappearing into the vast, unforgiving jungle below. A massive search operation was launched, but with thick forests, treacherous terrain, and an abundance of wildlife, the odds of finding her were slim. Days passed, and hope dwindled. But then, a local tribe made a grim discovery. Alana's remains were found, bringing at least a small measure of closure to her grieving loved ones. Her family, devastated beyond words, remembered her as a brilliant and independent young woman with a zest for life and an unrelenting passion for knowledge. The investigation that followed raised pressing questions about the potential dangers of anti-malarial medications. Could doxycycline have triggered Alana's tragic reaction? Her uncle, Lester Riley, believed so. He explained how her last phone calls had been filled with confusion and incoherence, suggesting a severe psychological reaction to the medication. Experts weighed in, acknowledging that while such side effects were rare, they could be devastating. Alana's case became a chilling reminder of the unseen mental health risks that medications can pose, especially for young travelers navigating unfamiliar environments. Beyond the medical concerns, Alana's story also underscored the immense psychological toll of isolation and stress. Though she was passionate about her research, the loneliness of being in a remote location, coupled with her deteriorating mental state, may have magnified her distress. Her family's attempts to support her were limited by distance, leaving them helpless as they tried to reach out through phone calls alone. Her tragic passing shed light on the importance of mental health awareness for travelers. It emphasized the need for better safety measures, proper medication monitoring, and increased support for those experiencing distress in foreign lands. Alana's family strongly believed that her actions were not deliberate, but rather the result of an overwhelming and uncontrollable medical condition. To those who knew and loved her, Alana was much more than the victim of an unfortunate tragedy. She was a vibrant, intelligent, and courageous young woman with a boundless curiosity for the world. Her untimely death was a heartbreaking loss, but her legacy serves as a powerful reminder of the need to prioritize mental health, especially for those embarking on challenging and adventurous journeys. Her story continues to resonate, urging people to take precautions, stay informed, and look out for one another when exploring the world. On July 27, 2023, Muhammad Hassan, a 27-year-old porter from Pakistan, found himself in a life-or-death struggle on Karakoram 2, K2, the world's second highest and one of its deadliest peaks. K2 is infamous for its brutal weather, steep ascents, and unpredictable avalanches, challenging even the most experienced climbers. But Hassan wasn't there for adventure or glory. He was there to provide for his wife, 3 children, and elderly grandmother. He had recently joined the Layla Peak expedition as a part of the rope-fixing crew, a high-risk but essential role in any major climb. His task was to secure ropes along the ascent, making it safer for climbers following behind. That night, at around 2:30 a.m., he joined dozens of climbers navigating the bottleneck, a notorious section just below the Great Serac, where ice falls and avalanches are constant threats. Unlike the elite climbers around him, Hassan lacked proper high-altitude training and had inadequate gear. Fellow climbers and Sherpas had warned him about the dangers, but he pressed on, determined to fulfill his duty. At some point during the climb, Hassan slipped and fell, leaving him trapped upside down at over 8,000 meters, 26,000 feet above sea level. The freezing temperatures, lack of oxygen, and sheer exhaustion quickly took their toll. To make matters worse, his oxygen mask broke, leaving him barely able to breathe. His condition deteriorated rapidly, and soon he was unable to move or call for help. As the night passed, dozens of climbers continued ascending past him, some attempting to break records, others chasing personal milestones, but almost none stopping to assist. Only 2 individuals, Tenjin Sherpa and Gabriel Tarso, made an effort to help. Tenjin tried to keep Hassan conscious, but as conditions worsened and his own oxygen supply dwindled, he was forced to abandon the effort. Tarso, a cameraman, also struggled with his own breathing and had no choice but to move on. Despite Hassan still being alive for hours after his fall, no coordinated rescue effort was made. Meanwhile, climbers stepped over his motionless body, determined to reach the summit at any cost. The harsh reality of high-altitude mountaineering became painfully clear when Norwegian climber Kristin Harila, who was on a record-setting quest to summit all 14 peaks above 8,000 meters, reached the top of K2 later that day. She later claimed that her team had tried to help, but found the conditions too dangerous. However, the fact that her team continued their ascent and celebrated at the summit sparked widespread criticism. Austrian mountaineer Philipp Flamig later released footage showing Hassan still alive, further fueling the outrage. Many questioned whether Hassan would have received help if he had been a Western climber instead of a local porter. German climber Wilhelm Steindl, who had turned back earlier due to unsafe conditions, condemned the lack of action and later started a fundraiser for Hassan's family, which raised over $170,000 to support his widow and children. The backlash was so severe that Layla Peak Expeditions, the company that had hired Hassan, was banned for 2 years due to negligence. Beyond the tragedy itself, Hassan's death exposed deep flaws in the world of extreme mountaineering. While K2's conditions make rescues nearly impossible, his case raised ethical concerns about the priorities of climbers and the systemic biases faced by local porters. Porters are often the unsung heroes of high-altitude expeditions, risking their lives to enable others to achieve their dreams. Yet, they receive far less recognition, support, and protection. His story has sparked a global conversation about the moral responsibilities of climbers and the need for better safety regulations. Though K2 claimed his life, Hassan's story has left a lasting impact, serving as a call for greater humanity, accountability, and change in the dangerous world of mountaineering. On July 3, 2018, Aaron Gibbons set out on what should have been a peaceful family trip, a day of tradition, bonding, and quiet survival in the vast Arctic wilderness. But by nightfall, he would become a legend, a father who made the ultimate sacrifice in the face of one of nature's most terrifying predators. Aaron, 31, was no stranger to the wild. Born and raised in Arviat, Nunavut, he belonged to a people who had spent generations coexisting with the brutal forces of nature. Though he worked in a gold mine, his heart remained tied to his community's hunting traditions. On that fateful day, he took his children to Sentinel Island, a remote Arctic outpost with windswept beaches and an abundance of wildlife. It was a chance to teach them the ways of their ancestors, to show them how to gather Arctic tern eggs, to respect the land, and to embrace the unforgiving beauty of the North. But nature doesn't follow a script. As the sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the tundra, Aaron caught sight of something massive, something pale, something moving, a polar bear. At first, it was just a shape in the distance, blending into the barren landscape. Then it moved again, and this time it was coming straight for them. Everything changed in an instant. Aaron's instincts kicked in before fear could take hold. The bear was closing in, fast, He shouted for his children to run, his voice sharp, urgent, leaving no room for hesitation. They sprinted for the boat, scrambling over the rough terrain, their hearts hammering. But Aaron, he didn't run. He couldn't. He planted his feet and turned to face the beast. He knew what had to be done. This was no ordinary bear encounter. There was no time to scare it away, no time to grab a weapon. The predator was already locked onto its prey, and Aaron was the only thing standing between it and his children. The attack was brutal, a desperate struggle of flesh against claws, of a father's unbreakable love against one of nature's deadliest hunters. His children, safe aboard the boat, could only watch in horror as their father fought for his life, his final moments filled with sheer, unrelenting courage. By the time help arrived, it was too late. Aaron had given everything. The bear was eventually killed, but the damage had been done. The man who had once stood as a protector of his people, a skilled hunter, a devoted father, was gone. His body, torn and bloodied, was a devastating reminder of the dangers lurking in the Arctic wilderness. In Arviat, grief turned into outrage. This wasn't just a tragic accident. It was part of a growing problem. Polar bears were getting bolder, venturing closer to human settlements. Some blamed climate change for forcing the bears further inland, while others pointed to Churchill, Manitoba, a nearby town famous for polar bear tourism. Had these guided tours, where people walked among the bears, desensitized the animals to humans? Had they lost their fear, turning them into silent stalkers of the North? Aaron's uncle, Gordy Kidpick, a respected elder, spoke out. He warned that if changes weren't made, more families would suffer, more lives would be lost. But even amid the anger, one truth remained undeniable. Aaron Gibbons had died a hero. His bravery was later recognized with Canada's Star of Courage, an honor for those who display extraordinary valor in the face of death, but no medal could bring him back. What he left behind was more than just sorrow. It was a legacy of selflessness, of love, of a father's instinct to protect at all costs, and it was a warning, a chilling reminder that in the battle between man and nature, nature never fights fair. Desiree Gibbon, a thrill-seeking 26-year-old from Queens, New York, set off on an adventure to Jamaica in November 2017. Staying at her grandmother's hotel in Montego Bay, she was more than just a tourist. She was a model, an aspiring filmmaker, and a globetrotter with big dreams of heading to film school in Europe. Montego Bay's lively streets and gorgeous beaches provided the perfect break from the chaotic pace of New York, offering both comfort and opportunity. Determined to make the most of her time there, she even sought a bartending job to help fund her future while uncovering the island's hidden gems. Her enthusiasm and open-minded nature led her to cross paths with all kinds of people, some friendly, others possibly dangerous. Despite whispers of certain areas, like Anchovy, being less than safe, Desiree either didn't notice or chose to ignore the warnings. Then, on November 26, 2017, she walked out of her grandmother's hotel to meet someone and vanished. The next morning, the worst possible news arrived. Locals in Anchovy discovered her body hidden in the bushes. Her throat had been slashed, her face bruised, a brutal and senseless attack that sent shockwaves through the community. Jamaica, already grappling with trust in its law enforcement, now faced another tragedy that seemed to slip through the cracks of justice. Desiree's devastated family was left struggling with the unthinkable. How could this happen in a place she had felt so at home? Her mother, Andrea, couldn't shake the horrifying thought that the killer was someone her daughter had trusted. Desiree had always been cautious, aware of the risks of traveling alone, yet it seemed her kindness had been betrayed in the worst possible way. The investigation was agonizingly slow. Overwhelmed authorities found little evidence, no immediate leads, and no suspects. As frustration mounted, rumors swirled. Was it a crime of passion, a robbery gone wrong, or something even more sinister lurking beneath the surface of paradise? Andrea, desperate for closure, was convinced her daughter had been deliberately lured away. The missing purse, money, and ID only reinforced the belief that it wasn't random. Weeks turned into months, and the case grew colder. Authorities released minimal details, citing an ongoing investigation, but progress was painfully slow. Desiree's family, stuck in an agonizing limbo, kept demanding answers, but their pleas seemed to fade into silence. The harsh reality set in. In a place where crime often met indifference and resources were stretched thin, finding justice felt impossible. Desiree's story became a chilling, cautionary tale, a reminder that even in the most beautiful places, danger can lurk beneath the surface. Her dreams of film school and making a name for herself were stolen in an instant, leaving behind only heartbreak and the unanswered question of who took her life. It was August 9, 1989, in the Stubai Alps of Austria, and Duncan McPherson, a 23-year-old former hockey player from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, was about to embark on a solo adventure. The weather was foggy, the slopes were eerily quiet, and Duncan had one thing on his mind: trying snowboarding for the first time. Now, if there was one thing Duncan was known for, it was his fearless, tough-as-nails attitude. His nickname? McPherson. He played junior hockey for the Saskatoon Blades and was drafted 20th overall by the New York Islanders in the 1984 NHL entry draft. But fate had other plans. Injuries took their toll, and by 23, his hockey career was over. Without a college degree and unsure of his next move, he was at a crossroads. Then, out of the blue, an opportunity arrived. Ron Dixon, a Scottish businessman, invited him to coach and play for the Tayside Tigers, a minor league team. Excited for a fresh start, Duncan decided to take a European road trip before reporting for duty. He planned to visit old friends, see new places, and soak in some adventure. On August 9th, Duncan borrowed a car from his former teammate George Pitt and drove to the Stubai Alps. He checked into a hostel, eager to hit the slopes the next day. At the resort, he chatted with a worker named Walter, explaining his plans. Despite the poor weather and near-zero visibility, Duncan was determined to snowboard. That was the last time anyone saw him. When he failed to show up for his scheduled coaching meeting in Dundee on August 12th, his family and friends panicked. Austrian authorities, however, weren't too concerned. Maybe he changed his plans? Maybe he ran off? But his family knew something was wrong. 6 weeks later, his red Opel hatchback was found in the resort parking lot, untouched, with his passport and belongings still inside. No one had seen or heard from him, and the trail went cold. For years, his parents, Bob and Linda, searched relentlessly, making 9 trips to Austria, hiring private investigators and pleading for media coverage. But Duncan had vanished without a trace. Fast forward 14 years to 2003. A worker at the Stubai Glacier Resort noticed a glove sticking out of the ice on the Schaufelferner Glacier. When he pulled on it, a frozen body surfaced, completely encased in ice. It was Duncan McPherson. The glacier had preserved his remains, and his clothing and wallet confirmed his identity. But this wasn't a simple case of a snowboarder getting lost. His broken snowboard was still strapped to his back, and his body showed brutal injuries: a shattered femur, severed limbs, multiple broken bones. These weren't injuries typical of a fall. The initial theory? Duncan fell into a crevasse and succumbed to his injuries. But Canadian pathologists had another idea. A snowcat, a massive machine used to groom ski slopes, might have accidentally run him over in the fog. The damage to his body and snowboard seemed to match that scenario. But if that was the case, why was his body buried for 14 years? Had someone tried to hide what happened? As investigators dug deeper, things didn't add up. The resort had claimed they returned his snowboard years earlier, yet there it was, still attached to his back. His car sat in the parking lot for weeks, yet authorities never properly investigated it. Was this just incompetence, or was there a cover-up to protect the resort's reputation? Even glacier movement theories didn't fully explain his severe injuries. More than 30 years later, the truth remains elusive. Was it a tragic accident, or did someone cover up what really happened? Duncan's family still searches for answers, but many questions remain unanswered. Officially, it's labeled an accident, but the mystery of Duncan McPherson's disappearance lingers, a haunting reminder of how easily the truth can be buried beneath the ice. Jamaica, with its sun-kissed beaches, pulsating reggae beats, and endless supply of tropical drinks, was the perfect getaway for 53-year-old Timothy Southern from Lichfield, Staffordshire. In May 2022, he landed at the Royal Decameron Club Caribbean in St. Lucia, and with his family, ready to soak up the warm island vibes. Days were spent basking in the sun, dipping in the ocean, and feasting on local delicacies, while evenings buzzed with music, laughter, and an array of colorful cocktails. One night, Timothy, feeling the island spirit, found himself in the middle of a drinking challenge with two fellow guests. The mission? Conquer all 21 cocktails on the menu in one sitting. Having already indulged in brandy and beer earlier in the day, one might think he'd call it a night, but the thrill of the challenge was just too tempting. The drinks flowed, the toasts kept coming, and the energy was infectious. Not typically a heavy drinker, Timothy dove into the challenge with enthusiasm. But after 12 cocktails, the mix of booze, heat, and sheer excitement began taking its toll. He started feeling wobbly, yet the buzz of the evening kept him going. Eventually, reality hit hard. He waved the white flag, said his goodbyes, and staggered back to his room, the resort's palm trees swaying, or was that just the alcohol? His family, unaware of just how much he had consumed, assumed he was simply exhausted from a long day. But once in his room, things took a turn for the worse. That lightheaded tipsiness transformed into a full-blown emergency. His stomach rebelled, nausea kicked in, and he struggled to stay coherent. In a desperate attempt to feel better, he tried to force himself to vomit but quickly found himself in trouble. A family member, sensing something was seriously wrong, rushed to his aid, placing him in the recovery position. Panic set in as his condition worsened. His breathing became shallow, his skin turned cold and clammy, and his family, now in full crisis mode, pleaded for help. A nurse finally arrived, but shockingly, no ambulance had been called. As precious minutes slipped away, the family begged for action. When the nurse finally began chest compressions, it was too late. Timothy's pulse was weak, his body unresponsive, and their worst fears became reality. He was gone. The cause of death? Acute gastroenteritis due to excessive alcohol consumption, a clinical explanation for an utterly heartbreaking loss. The Southern family's dream vacation had turned into an unthinkable nightmare. Their grief was compounded by anger, believing the resort had failed them, not only by allowing such reckless drinking but also by its delayed response. And as if fate hadn't been cruel enough, their travel insurance didn't cover repatriation, forcing them to start a GoFundMe to bring Timothy home. A paradise lost, in every sense of the word.